Alders Hutchinson, Johnson, and Galvin are present. Alder Burnett has been excused. I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'll entertain a motion on the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. On to regular business. Item number 1 for consideration with possible action on request to fill the following positions and all subsequent vacancies resulting from internal transfers. A financial analyst.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And that passes unanimously. B, operator 2.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And that passes unanimously. And C, payroll manager.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And that passes unanimously. Item number 2 for consideration with possible action on the addition of an Office of Violence Prevention Public Health Data Officer. Staff.
So you have in the packet the job description, and just one thing to note too is that we did change the title to Office of Violence Prevention, should I have it, I think Operations and Data Officer, so if we make an amendment to that, that'd be helpful. So if the OVP has a director at this point, and what we're looking to do is to add a position to basically help bolster. The director is going to be really focused on building relationships with the community and kind of setting a strategy. This position is going to be focusing on the data analysis and using that data to further the initiatives for the Office of Violence Prevention. So if you want to talk to Director Rainier Legg or Commander Warwick, they're here to speak more to it. Oh, and then the financial impact too. It will be paid out of the grant fund. I think there's about $1 million, so that'll be funded, the position, they'll fund the position for 2024 and I believe 2025. And then if it continues, if the program's successful, then that would come back on for levy funds.
So is the point to set this as an LTE position right now?
Yep.
Is that noted? I didn't
It
see
can be
that.
noted. That was the intent, to have an LT position that's funded through the grant.
Okay. So I'd make a motion to approve as an LTE position, noting the Scrivener's error in the title.
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously. Item number 3 for consideration with possible action on the implementation of the updated city pay plan as recommended by Carlson Detman Market Analysis. Staff.
So we have as a recommendation is the 50th or 75th percentile plan that's in the packet, and that was presented by Carlson Detman. They had two options, the 50th percentile or the blend of the 50th and 75th. They were also recommended 2% COLA in April of next year, and then each employee would receive the annual step increase or increase in the performance range next year. So a little bit of background. In 2017, there was a study that was done that focused really on the internal equity and the job duties of each position. The reason why they focused a lot internally was because the last study was done in the 1980s. So with that pay plan, they created the salary plan to be at the 50th percentile of the market. It also had 7 steps, which is called the hybrid plan. Step 7 is a control point, which is 100% of the market, which means that it's at 100% of the 50th percentile. This also created some consistent guidelines for hiring and also how employees move through the plan. So if you fast forward to this year, we did another market assessment, and the purpose was to create a pay structure that either maintains the 50th percentile or goes to the hybrid or something above the 50th percentile. So what we did was, this assessment did not focus internally on the job responsibilities or job duties. It was mainly the market and external comparisons. There were some limited positions that were reviewed, and those were attached in the packet as well. So with Carlson Detman, when they presented last month, they stated that they used a variety of public sector comparables, and that's also in the presentation, and then also some survey data that included some private sector information as well. So the findings that they came up with was they presented 2 options for us. One was the 50th percentile or the meet the market plan. The other one was the blended 50th and 75th percentile plan, which would be more competitive than the 50th percentile. So if you look at the 50th and 75th blend market, I think we've been muted this whole time, so hopefully they can hear us now. So if we look at the 50th and 75th market and employees right now, the top 1/3 of our jobs are 11% behind that market. The lower 2/3 are 6% behind that market. And then what this pay plan does, if you want to go to that pay plan, if you have it, if you look at pay grades between A and F, they have the minimum steps. They start at like step 3 or step 2. They call that cleaving. So basically they cleave the first two positions, or first two steps. So we start those positions and those pay grades at step 3 or step 2, which makes it more competitive to recruit for those positions. And then if you look at the control point for this pay plan that's in the packet, step 7 or the control point was increased by about 11% compared to the current structure that we have. So the implementation of this, what's going to happen is each employee will be placed on a step in the same pay grade that provides an increase. So you increase the employee's pay rate on December 31st, 2023. And then employees that are currently, or I should say on December 31st, 2023, in the performance range, if they land in the performance range in the new pay plan, they will not be getting any type of increase. So I can give an example of that. So if you look at the pay plan that's in the packet, if someone was in pay grade E and on December 31st of this year, if they were making $25, that'd be in between step 5 and step 6, so it'd be in between $24.64 and $25.29. That person would move up to step 6 and would go up to $25.29. If someone was in pay grade E and they were making $26 at the end of the year, they would be in the performance range currently, and then the new plan, they'd be in the performance range. So in January 1, since they're in the performance range, they would not be getting an increase. So that's a little bit of a difference with how people would get an increase and how people would not. So we would like to implement the plan January 1, and then in April, or the pay period of April 1st, we'd have a 2% COLA, and the total cost of the plan would be about $892,000. That's what Carlson Detman estimated for the annual cost. And then I had included in the packet was the distribution placement on the schedule. So if you look at about, and this is for the increase of wages starting January 1 if you're placed on the pay scale, or the proposed pay scale. There's about 256 employees that will receive about a 2% or higher increase on January 1, and then about 180 employees that will have less than 2% increase. And what I talked about before was this recommendation is looking at January 1 through December 31st, and we're looking at a total increase in wages. And that includes the implementation of the pay structure, the COLA, and that step increase for employees. So with that in mind, if you had from January 1 to December 31st, about 256 employees would have a 5% or higher increase in their wages throughout the year. And then about 180 employees, you'd have 143 employees that would be having about a 4% to 4.5% increase. Then you have about 37 employees that would be closer to a 3% increase from January 1 to December 31st. So the minimum increase throughout the year will be about 3%. So this recommendation is included in the mayor's proposed budget. And I think Alder Johnson, you want us to bring it back here at personnel to talk it through and have a discussion before into the budget discussion. We obviously have a lot of people here too that have been waiting patiently, and so I'm not sure if you guys want to talk about it first, ask some questions to clarify, or open up to the employees.
What do you think, would it be better for us to talk first and then let them make comments, or let them make their comments first? And
Well,
then
I think if you've
discuss?
got questions, maybe now that maybe ask the questions, we're gonna ask questions on both ends, but if you got something directly relevant now, I would do that. I don't think we need to discuss yet, is my point.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, then I would entertain a motion to open the floor.
yeah, I would make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. So, I mean, usually at city council, everyone throws their name in a sheet of paper and they read it off. But we'll just, however you guys want to do it, just take your time. Anyone that wants to get up and talk, make comments or questions, the floor is open.
All right. My name is Mark Berglund. I live at 806 North Broadway. I am a mechanic for the Green Bay Park and Forestry Department. We have a labor association. I'm also the president of that association. Periodically, our association has meetings with the Human Resources Department and our director. Our recent meeting, we discussed the cost of living adjustment and the upcoming wage study. We have been told by multiple sources that Human Resources had budgeted 5% cost of living for April 2024. Our concern was that the cost of living and the wage study would be played off of one another. We were assured that they were being treated as two separate issues. Also, the wage study was only looking at wages, not job descriptions or reclassifications. The wage study comes out and our budgeted 5% is now 2%. And there are job reclassifications and positions reviewed. Budgeting 5% was explained to us that the mayor or the city council could adjust that. In my understanding of budgeting was that if 5% was budgeted, obviously the finance department must have reviewed that and said the available funds were there for that. So now that our cost of living went from the budgeted 5% to 2%, where did the rest of the money go? In 2017, we did a wage study. 6 years later, we're right back to where we were then. Too low a pay scale, so we have many job openings that can't be filled and employees leaving for higher paying jobs. If we kept up with the cost of living, we would probably never have to do a wage study again. The study says that everyone should see a 3% increase in 2024, but not the 5% that was budgeted. The study says that the lower 2/3 of wages are down 6%, and you're going to combat that with a 2% cost of living. The control point states that every grade should see an increase of 11%. I believe that means over the course of 7 years, which puts you where we are today and where we were 6 years ago. Do you see a pattern here? Last year during this whole thing last year, I did my own little cost of living survey. 2021, Green Bay gave out 1%. 22 was 2%. 2023 was 3%. Village of Ashwaubenon, 2023, 5%. Green Bay Schools was 4.7% in 22, 5% in 23. They are getting 5% in 24. City of De Pere gave 2% in 22, 5% in 23, and they're giving 5% again for 24. Appleton, 5% in 23. Village of Little Chute, 5.5% in 23. Village of Swamico, 6% in 23. Village of Alloway, 5% in 23. The federal government cost of living went up 5% in 23. Social Security went up 5.9% in 21 and 8.7% in 23. You know, Social Security is getting bigger raises than we are. Door County went up 5.5% in 23. Kewaunee County went up 7.5% in 2023. So I propose that they bring back the 5% cost of living to get people up to where they should be sooner and implement the wage study recommendations at the end of the year. I believe the whole idea of this wage study was to get people up to speed so that we're not losing people and we can get applicants. This wage study only, it's going in the wrong direction. You know, and the fact that I believe they had the money for the 5%, why don't you just do that? If the money was there, you can implement the wage study at a later time. You know, I just see a trend here where we just keep on doing wage studies every 5 or 6 years, because 5 or 6 years down the road, we're in the same position again because we're just not keeping up. I think that you need to do something and make a big impact, you know, now and start nipping it so that it's not going to, you know, roll out of control like it has been. The state of Wisconsin certifies our Park and Forestry Labor Association as a collective bargaining unit, yet there's never any bargaining. We are just supposed to accept what is doled out to us. Police, fire, and transit are all unionized. They get to bargain for their wages. What did police and fire get last year, this year, and next year? In closing, I may have said some things that are offensive to some. That's not my intention, but sometimes things have to be said, whether some people like it, or agree, or not. Thank you.
Do you have any? Specific questions? I mean, you had some, it sounded like questions there, like where did?
Well, you know, I mean, if, you know, when we were told that they were budgeted for 5%, I just cannot imagine that, you know, somebody threw out a 5% number without checking with finance and saying, hey, can we afford 5%? You know, and really, by Wisconsin state law, we, as a collective bargaining unit, we are supposed to be able to negotiate our wages up to the CPI index, which I think is 8% right now. So, you know, I don't think we're gonna try to get greedy and say, well, the CPI is 8%, we want 8%. But the fact that apparently finance signed off on 5%, why can't we do that? So,
Yeah, and we're gonna get to that point,
Well,
Mark.
sure, I understand.
Yeah, when we have an opportunity to talk with staff a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So just hold that thought for a minute, but I also just wanna say, like, I don't think anything you said was offensive.
Well-
And so, but I think obviously you have a lot of colleagues here in the room, and I just wanna commend you because you come prepared to every council meeting and you speak on issues that are important to the people that you represent, and you're doing so tonight. And I wanna thank you for that because you always come prepared and you come with facts and you come with thoughtful suggestions, not just gimme, but how can we solve this problem? And you're doing the same thing tonight, so thank you, Mark.
okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the committee? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Rillash. I live at 926 Phasiana Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I reviewed some of the information you guys sent out, and the way I see it is an entry-level position coming into the city is going to get about a $2 lift. So, being here 38 years, I'm going to get an 11-cent lift. Is there anything that we can do to get positions reclassified to absorb some of this cost? Or not cost, but to spread the wealth? Because those people are going to get 8 or 9%, and I'm going to get 1/4%.
Does he fall in, Joe, with some of those that we saw in the?
Well, I guess one thing I just wanted the committee to know is we really shouldn't talk about any specific employees. I think we have to go into closed session to do that, so I'm trying to talk in the aggregate about everything. But
Okay.
so, I mean, even at, perhaps even common council, I could share even specific data with that, but right now it's going to be aggregate, because we don't have any closed session
Right,
language.
and I have no problem with, because there's other positions, from what I'm seeing, that are gonna be affected like this, not just with, you know, Park and Rec and Forestry. Any of the non-unionized or non-represented positions are the ones that are gonna be taking the hit on this, and some of them are gonna be taking the hit on this. Is that correct?
Well, how I describe it is, so first of all, this is, Carlson Devon had 2 plans that they proposed, and we are recommending 1 plan. So their study isn't necessarily what the increase is for employees, it's what is the pay plan to be competitive. That's what they recommended. So we're taking the pay plan, the 50th and 75th percentile, and recommending we start January 1st. So if someone is in the performance range right now, and will be in the performance range in their plan, that means that they are above the 50th, 75th blend market. That's what that means. And that's why Carlson Detman, when they recommend how to implement it, they're stating they should not get an increase because they're already above the market, the control point. That is the rationale behind it. And whether we do that or not, that's just what was recommended we do at this point.
Okay.
So that's why someone who is a new hire, or maybe someone who less experience, they might get a higher increase because they're farther away from the control point. They're 11% behind, whereas some employees are already above the control point. That's why there's a difference in the increase.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Paul Melizova, Streets Department, address is N3592 Luxembourg, Wisconsin. To Mike's point, when we talked this afternoon, Joe, you had asked, and I said without understanding the specifics of how the new salaries were generated, I wasn't able to comment on your question regarding what we thought about it. I ran a couple numbers, and as you can see, word spread quickly, and it did not go over favorably. We're devaluing some of our most important employees, those who have been here for the longest period of time. One of the quirks in the system that I came across is an employee who was hired in 2021, let's say in July, will be put at the same step as an employee who was just recently hired in 2023. They both get moved down to step 2, but if the employee who was hired in 2023 has an earlier anniversary date, they would move up a step sooner than the employee who was hired in 2021. They're in fact getting higher pay for a period of time, even with 2 years less of service. So there's some issues with the plan, and we discussed them. Okay, but I think that's something that needs to be resolved. I think the two primary issues are, as Mike stated, the lower senior employees getting significantly more. I have no problem with that. We need to do something. We can't find people, okay? And we need to take care of the people who have been here, through the thick and thin, the hard times. Ultimately, what this comes down to, Alders, we're tired of being taken advantage of because we can. Okay, we see what police and fire get, and we're tired of it. Okay, it's been too long, too much, and you're seeing the effects of it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Josh Brassfield, 2058 Mile Heights Trail, Green Bay. So my title here is the street superintendent, and I guess my question is, and maybe it's more for staff too, is how do you see this plan impacting employee retention and recruitment? So I see it every day, as these guys do. I work hand in hand with them, and I see, trying to recruit people to come in. We're hiring people right now off of the street and having to train them to get a CDL, where when I started 11 years ago, it was a requirement that you had a CDL coming in. So what is it going to do to, that 22-year-old guy comes in, he works here for 7 years, and then he's up here speaking like Mike is after 38, that now he's hit his control point, and where do we go from here? So I don't necessarily know what the answer is. Maybe there's another wage study that's done in that next 7 years, but it's a concern of mine because we're trying to keep these services rolling with less and less people and a variety of other things.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right.
Motion to close the floor? Wait, did you?
No.
Okay, sorry, I saw your hand up. Motion to close the floor.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that, the floor is closed. I agree with a lot of what I'm hearing today. It has been a concern of, my concern, almost since I got elected, just about 8 years ago, and I know I've heard other alders voice concern that we're seeing employees leave, going to other municipalities to make more money, in some cases doing less work. And it's been a burr in my side for a long time. And I've made comments at budget where we delegate the non-union people to 1-2%, while the unions are able to bargain for more. And we're doing it because that's the way it works out. Act 10 didn't do anybody any favors in that regard. And you heard earlier in the finance, when they changed the way they distribute the money in the state, how it's affected what this city can do and how well it can do it. So, this is something we've been pushing for a long time to try and get some changes. I'm interested to hear what you've had to say, and I think Director Falls has been, or Chief Falls has been taking some notes on some of your concerns. So I hope that, I don't think this is done here tonight. I think this is, my opinion is, I think it should go back for some more consideration. Alder Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not gonna get done tonight. This is really part of the budget process, right? So it's great to see all of you here, share that feedback. This is, to me, more of a, almost an initial kick at the can, well, probably your second kick. The first kick was when you presented it. We asked you to come back with a recommendation. This is the recommendation. But ultimately, the recommendation gets adopted through the budget. So that's November. But now's the time for us to be doing our homework to really, to address some of the concerns that were brought up. And I do have a couple of questions for staff. Mr. Berglund talked about the 5% budgeted COLA. Can you address that, please?
Yeah, I think it's poorly phrased, not by Mark, but I think when we say it's a 5% COLA that's budgeted, we have to put some type of number to budget and try and prepare for the 2024 budget. So to phrase it as like we were planning for a COLA and then trying to, go from there, I think we just started somewhere. And we just kind of looked at where the salary study came in, and it came in around that number. So to address it a little bit too, the 5% would be COLA, that'd be across the board for everyone. The salary study, it kind of shows that it would distribute it differently. Some people would be around 10% or higher, some people would be above 5% or higher, some would be lower. But if you do 5% across the board, it's gonna be the same for everyone. But the pay plan that the Carlson-Devon organization put together, that would be, essentially you take every step and you add 11%. The COLA would be adding 5% to every step. So that's kind of a trade-off of a short-term run to, I think, people will be happier because it's 5% for everyone in the performance range. But then again, your pay plan now is losing that 6% for every step. So the budget, the question is, it wasn't really budgeted 5%, it was a placeholder to help us prepare for the budget process.
So we could, in theory, still put in minimums, maximums, floors and ceilings,
Yep.
to maybe help address some of those concerns.
Yeah, and I thought a good concern that was brought up was about the experience with someone who's been here like 3 years versus someone who's been here for like 1 year. They will probably go to step one because you're going up 11%. So some people are going up like $1, but then some people might go up 2, get to that step one. And you'll see that with pay grades between A through G, which we have a lot of employees in those pay grades here, especially in pay grade E. With some of those employees where the minimum step is step 3, you'll have quite a few people at like $22, $20, they're going right to $23, $35. So it's not the same increase, but they're starting at the same spot. So there's pros and cons to that.
Okay, so I mean, to me, the likely outcome here would be that we would kick this back to staff for a little bit more fine tuning. I mean, obviously, the final result would be adopted during budget, but, I think the hard part is, this goes back a little bit to the finance committee, right? When we talked about levy limits and how the state imposes a cap on us in terms of how much we can raise taxes, right? And so we'd love to give bigger raises, but then in order for us to do that, we'd have to tax the max and probably cut somewhere in order to do that. And obviously, the biggest source to cut is staff. Nobody wants to do that. It doesn't feel great, right? So, but we have a unique opportunity this year, and I think this is why several of us had strongly advocated for this survey, and that's shared revenue. And the state adjusted its formula, and while I don't think they did enough, the city will be getting $3 million-ish more this year. And we have that opportunity, as was talked about, there's that freeze on expenditure restraint for a year. And I feel like we have one opportunity right now to get this right, to recognize, I think, long-term employees that have given to the residents of the city for a long time, but also put us in a good position to attract talent in a really tight labor market. And that's really, why we requested this is because we did want to right-size things. We want to take care of our staff. And that's really what ultimately led to this. The issue in the past has been, like, we could order up this study, and it could come back and say, here's the recommendations, you need to do X, Y, Z, but the state law said, nope, you can't raise taxes to make that correction. And that's the predicament we've always been in the past. We have the opportunity to fix that now. And that's why, and this happened before I was elected, but the timing of the raise used to be January 1st, and then it got bumped to September or October, right? And then last year, we modified that, we bumped it back up to April. We were able to do that because of ARPA. One thing, Joe, and I brought this up during the ARPA discussion, is that I wanted to see that date come back to January 1, and that's not in this proposal. And I know that's gonna cost money, but that is at least one recommendation that when we, assuming we kick this back to staff, that I would like to at least see a proposal that shifts that date back to January 1. And so really when we're taking a look at this distribution of increases for placement schedule, this is very helpful, but it's missing a really important piece, which is the fiscal impact of each of these areas. And I think if we can get that calculation, I think that would be really helpful in terms of determining maybe ceilings and floors, timing of when a raise could be implemented. I would love to see January 1st. I can't sit here and promise that we'll be able to deliver that. We'll obviously have to see the numbers, because that 3 million is going to go pretty quickly once we start implementing really cost of inflation, less than cost of inflation raises, which is the real sad reality. But we have to do something that I think gets us a little bit closer. The topic was brought up about reclassifying positions. Has staff talked about that?
So I think there's the bulk of the positions that were looked at were police captains, police commanders, and then assistant fire chiefs and the battalion chiefs. And that's because, so I think some people alluded to it, with police and fire unions, with their COLA increases or wage increases over the years, they've really built in a compression with those supervisors, and it's gotten to a point where we had to do something about it. So that's really why those positions were focused on. There are some other positions that were focused on because they were in the queue to be reclassed last year, or maybe 2 years ago, so then we reclassed them with this study. So that's really the bulk of the positions, and there are a few new ones.
Yeah, and the reason, of course, I bring it up is we were having a few come to us with reclasses, and we talked that this study would hopefully help us get us into a position where we're avoiding that, because I don't want that to turn into a mechanism, you know, where we're trying to get people raises by reclassifying them. I don't think that's a fair and equitable approach to how we, you know, really assign salary to skills and responsibility. So, I mean, I hope that some additional analysis is given to that to really make sure that we've set the table level. Okay. Okay, yeah, and I think the other questions I've written down were addressed. That's what I have for now, but again, just wanting to emphasize that this isn't going to be settled tonight. So I hope that I hope you stay engaged to this process, and I'm sure your reps will keep you apprised of that. Council will maybe take this up, maybe not, but really it's that budget season when this really becomes a timely and pertinent discussion. So,
Alder Hutchinson?
Yeah, the fact these people are here is kind of confusing to me in the sense that we wanted to do something that was not this. I don't think it's good that these people are here from the sense, if we would have done this assessment, they should be in agreement with it, not coming in. And these are all older faces. I don't want to see older faces looking at our report and going, well, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? It's counter to what we wanted to do. So, I guess it may be good to look at the program that was used. They always use a straight line because you can get a slope and get an R value and all that stuff on graphs. But I wonder, why couldn't you take this graph? I mean, this must come up all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And what I'm going to recommend is going to cost the city money potentially, but you take the line and you kink it. After so many years, you kink it so it's a little steeper slope. Okay, now that's just a way to address the fact that if you've been here so many years, all of a sudden your pay is above the 62%, whatever we're using, for the straight line, and it should be maybe greater than 62% of what everyone else around Wisconsin's making. And we should address that by maybe looking at this, how we present the salaries and how it's portrayed, you know what I'm saying? Now, the people who did this should be able to do that, I would think, right?
I think so. I think, yeah, that can be done.
Okay, and I'm only saying that because you can kind of hold the entry level at a certain position and then treat those who have been here longer differently, okay? And I think maybe that's what's required. You don't have to take the whole line and move it up. You kink it. I mean, to make sense. I don't like to see these people here. You know what I'm saying? These are the people that run the city. I don't want to see them here. I want to see them at home going, yeah, that's right. So, I guess my question, I guess my comment to the staff is, can we look at this with the intent of making our workforce more in agreement to the evaluation that we ran here? Because it doesn't make sense if we're ticking off our older workforce people by trying to make it right. It doesn't make sense to me. Again, it's gonna cost the city money, but I think maybe it should. It was, to me, it should. If I see this, I mean, people who are sat here and said nothing, said something by sitting here. You know what I'm saying? The people are articulate who came up, but the fact they're all here is important, I think. So we have to recognize that and move forward with that. I wish I could take a camera and bring it to Common Council, you know, and say, when we were talking about this during the budget, because Alder Johnson is correct, this is budget. This is a budget thing. But I think of all things we pay for, this is what we pay for. We want these people to work for us, not go somewhere else. So that's my point.
I guess, Joe, I would like to add in that we're still seeing people leaving, and granted, you haven't implemented anything yet, but social media, you see the complaints, people complaining about the lack of service from the city. And when I call DPW, I'm being told it's because we can't hire them, or we hire them and they quit, so we don't have anyone to do the work. So stuff is not getting done. We had the same problem at Bay Beach. Again, that's seasonal help, but the parks were suffering again this year. Parks and Forestry is suffering. And when I have someone stand up and says they've been here for 38 years and he's gonna get less than 1% raise, and the COLA is only 2%, you know, that's just, the way I'm looking at it, he's losing money. And, you know, like Brian said, we need to look at this again, but I'm just wondering, you know, we looked at the 50 to 75 percentile. Is there a way of looking at some different options? You know, either with what Alder Hutchinson is talking about, you know, change the rate a little bit, or, you know, can we look at it like a 60, 65% up to 80, 85%? Because again, if we're only in the 50 percentile, that means there's other places that are still offering more money and benefits than we are. And I mean, Green Bay is a great city. I mean, I loved working here when I was here. But the thing is, if someone next door is offering you a better deal, why wouldn't you leave and go take it? Because you got to think about your family, your future, your retirement. All this rolls into that. I mean, we've seen police supervisors leave now. I don't know about fire department, but we've seen other vested employees from the other departments leave, and even the ones with bargaining power, more power than Parks and Forestry have, leaving to go to other municipalities because they're getting paid more. And so I think if we want to stop what's been happening for the last several years here, maybe we got to look at something a little bit better than the 50 percentile. And, you know, I mean, granted, yeah, folks, budget time comes, the state says, this is all you got, this is all the room you have, you can't go over that. I mean, I remember once, the police department, they were given a choice, you guys want some of these new positions, or do you want a raise? Well, the guys were like, oh, the hell with the positions, I'll take the raise. So I get that. And so I, you know, strong recommendation that, you know, maybe, and I know it's gonna be tight for the budget time in November, but we've gotta put the work into it, and we've gotta see what we can do.
Joe, the fiscal impact of this proposed plan, I thought I saw that somewhere roughly 900,000, is that right?
Yeah, so what, essentially, what you do is, like the example I used before, like, if someone was at $25 in grade E, and they're going up to $25.29, you take 29 cents, you times it by 2,080, you get a number, you do that for every single person, that's where you get the 892.
Okay,
that
so
doesn't-
it's
that doesn't
892.
include- Yep,
And
so
that
it doesn't
doesn't-
include the COLA or the.
Yep, and that's what I was getting at. So the COLA would come separately.
Yeah.
And right now, you know, the budget in its draft format, I mean, this is the plan that you've held right now?
I think this will be included in it, but I think we knew this conversation would shift, it was gonna happen.
Sure.
That's the placeholder that we have this time.
Yeah, and I would presume that budget's probably shifting every day. But, okay. And it just, again, it helps me understand, right? Recognizing that as we kind of go through this budget process and we start hitting that ceiling again, the state-imposed ceiling, you know, we're going to be restricted a little bit on what we can do, or if we make certain decisions, we'll be forced to make other decisions, right? And so we got to be able to be prepared, I think, to have the information to have those. But I've said this every year at this table. The most valuable asset that the city of Green Bay has are the men and women who do the work on behalf of its residents. And we need, if we have discontent within our workforce, and based on the numbers that Mark shared with us, I can see why. And to Alder Hutchinson's point, the purpose of this study was to have the opposite of this. And so we got to figure out how to get ourselves into a better place where everybody can feel like they got a win out of this.
I'll just say a couple things in the sense of, I think Carlson Detman, what they did was, I think they did what they sought to do in the sense that they created a plan that was competitive in the 50th and 75th percentile. And I think someone asked me, Josh, like, what will this do for recruitment and retention? I think if you look at recruitment and you look at where we would start recruiting with the proposed pay plan, I think it would greatly help. Where the weak point is with people in the performance range and thinking about those long-term employees. So that's what we have to kind of piece together.
Yeah, and you can't take those separately, right? You can't have a conversation about recruitment if you're not willing to have a conversation about retention.
Is this 900,000, this doesn't include the raises, proposed raises for police and fire, does it?
No, just people on the city pay plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do want to make a comment about that, and I just want to be very careful, and I appreciate the comment, right, about police and fire have seen different wage increases. I just want to make sure that as city employees, we're not pitting ourselves against each other. I think that's really, really important. We need all of you. And I think we just need to make sure that we're giving you an honorable deal that recognizes everybody's efforts to the city. So I kind of want to at least make that comment and make sure that as we refer this back to staff, that our pencils get a little bit sharper to really come up with a plan that everybody can say, hey, you know what, city workers are united to do, you know, the job that the residents demand, and it's because we all agree that we're being compensated fairly for what we bring.
All right.
All right, so, I mean, really, I think this can just, Joe, you got all this, you captured all this feedback. We could just kind of refer this back to staff and leave it at that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Motion?
If you don't mind, I just want to ask the question, because obviously we had discussion here. I mean, if anybody else still wants to make a comment or ask a question, I at least want to give you that opportunity before we close this topic. If anybody wants to say something, just raise your hand, I'll gladly open the floor. I make a motion to open the floor again.
My name's Tom
No,
Larkin.
hang on, we just got to
Procedural
open
thing.
the floor. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the floor is open. Yes, sir.
My name's Tom
I
Larkin.
need you to come up by the podium, I'm sorry.
My name's Tom Larkin. I live at 1806. Sorry. I live on Christiana Street. I've been with the city for 8 years. I've seen 7 of our mechanics leave. We ain't keeping them. A few of them retired, but a lot of them went to different places, and that we can't have. We can't keep them trucks up. A lot of our trucks are older than me. Well, not really, but. But
maybe.
But, you know, we need to keep the older people. I mean, I'm one of them. You know, and you start pushing us out the door, it's not a good thing. I left a place to come here, and I was there for 25 years to make myself better. So I'm trying to stay, you know, I want to stay here. I love this city is my town. And to stay here and to enjoy my work habits and doing what I do now, you know, we need to talk about the pay raises better. You know, some of us, yeah, we're doing all right, but it doesn't keep up with the cost of living. And we need to. You know, we all need to.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
My name is Alexander Gannon, Clement Street. You guys talk about specifically allocating the financing for wages, but you guys are, a lot of people are exclaiming that you guys are having a hard time hiring a newer workforce. Is there any financial implications involved trying to involve a newer generation of people that can work for the city?
Not really. I mean, it's a levy limit supported. So when we talk about levy, that's property taxes.
Yeah.
So sorry, sometimes we get so hung up in the lingo
No,
that we
that's
use, and
fine.
I don't want to pretend you don't know, but I don't want to pretend you do, and so the state restricts how much we can raise property taxes every year. And so when, of course, we have personnel, that comes from property taxes. Some of it is funded through fees and grants, but that's not really, that doesn't have an impact as much on the overall discussion. It's the property tax supported positions, and whether you're young or old, I mean, that doesn't matter.
Isn't levy also involved for like educational purposes, like for like public funding for schooling, for example, like that?
Yes, except that comes through a different taxing jurisdiction. That'll come through the
Okay.
school board.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of that would actually help with trying to hire new workforces, trying to create a finance job allocation, trying to circulate like more people that are coming in, because like the previous man said, there's more people leaving out. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's my only question / statement.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and it's, yeah, for our purposes, it doesn't, the difference, I guess, between the types of employees doesn't really matter. It takes your salaries in aggregate, and that's how we address it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sure.
Barbara Dorf, 3375 Pebble Beach Court, Green Bay. And I know I must speak to the chair. My words are for the group behind me. I was on finance. I was the chair of finance for 4 years, on city council for 6 years. And what I want to say is November 3rd, or 2nd, November 2nd is joint personnel and finance. Is that not right? I believe.
Looking at staff.
Yes, yes, it is. That is the day that we need people to come. One of the days. Another day is November 7th and November 9th. Those are 2 other days where there are council meetings. When I sat on city council and voted for budgets, so many times there were alders in the room that did vote no and didn't really understand that what they were doing was hurting our city, because by voting no, you're voting to defund the police and the fire and DPW when you vote no on a budget. But partly it was maybe because they didn't understand. You guys have a deep understanding of what goes into making a budget and what goes into personnel. And it's nice, I love that people are here, because it gives us an opportunity to say, go to the council meeting where you need to convince the people that might be voting no. That's very important. So thank you, Chair, for listening to me.
You're welcome. Yes,
He
sir.
looked hesitant to call on you, Barb.
In regards to what you had said about we're all on the same team working together, essentially is unfortunately with the Act 10 and the processes that have taken place, there has been some animosity created. I shouldn't say there has been, there's absolutely animosity created to no fault of DPW employees, police and fire, but it exists. Okay, and we've been taken advantage of because we could be. Okay, whether right or wrong, previous administrations did not do what they should have done, and you're now starting to see all of the, fallout of that, and it's going to be severe, okay, if something isn't done quickly. So, while I commend everything you guys have done, and I appreciate your comments, it's fantastic, we got 40, plus people here tonight, but you get what you pay for, okay, and you're starting to see that right now. And we're gonna have bigger issues than just personnel if we don't take a serious look at what's going on. Okay, thanks.
I think there were a couple others that had their hands up before. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make one last comment. Mark Berglund, 806 North Broadway. I just want to say thank you to the committee for allowing us all to come in and speak our mind and listening to what we have to say and taking and doing whatever you can with that. So many times we go to people and they say, yeah, and it goes over their head. I just want to say I appreciate all of you letting us come in here, speaking our mind, and actively listening to us and see if we can come to a solution. So I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
One more. To speak to Paul's point, from a middle management standpoint, you said, Alder Johnson, that this is the best resources, all these people that work here. And you're gonna have to make tough decisions, but I guess keep that in mind that, that tough decision about the next plow truck, the next ambulance, the next whatever, you're not gonna have to make, it won't be as tough if you don't have these people, right? So if they're all gone, it'll be an easy decision because you won't have anybody to run it anyway. So.
All right, yes, sir.
Ryan Lewis, 1607 Kalahari Drive. I've been with the city for 23 years. I started in the park department, now with DPW here. And I've seen a lot, when I first started, it was very few people that left, and you were here for the duration of your time. Now, people are coming and only here 1 or 2 years, and they're leaving and going to other communities that he gave the numbers of Ashwaubenon, Howard, wherever, and they're going, they get a little experience and they leave. So we're not keeping anyone, and we're spending more time training people, and people can be taught, but that's a lot of man hours, continually training people, and then when it comes to the season of plowing, which is so important to the city, we don't have the people experience to do the plowing. And you're gonna see that more and more because people don't have the experience coming in. But people can be taught, but it again takes time. And you're seeing more and more of that, and what everyone is saying around here is they're gonna do something about it, but I've been here for 23 years and I've heard it, I've seen it, and I predicted that it was gonna be a 3%, overall for us. Yes, some newer employees are getting the bump up, but when you're starting out at a lower wage, when they did the year's study 7 years ago, I knew it was gonna be a problem because you lowered people coming in and they're not at a competitive wage. Now, you're having this problem and people are leaving, you can't get anyone to come. And we're first talking about it right now, but if we don't do something soon, like Paul said, people are gonna be leaving in mass numbers. And people are gonna be retiring, and we're gonna have no one that has the experience to even replace them because no one seems to wanna do our jobs. And why are they gonna come and work 16-hour days plowing and then turn around and come back in after 4 hours and do it all again, and you're not getting no paid, and you could go do something else and maybe not be as stressed or what have you under those circumstances. So I think the council and you guys really have to look hard at what can we do? We need to increase the wage coming in for employees, but also look at what we talked about as the long-term effect for people that have been here 23 years and plus, because if you figure out I'm only gonna get 7 cents, I mean, that's really not an encouragement to stick around, or like, thank you for 23 years at 7 cents. So I think we really have to do some thinking on this. And like you said, Chair Johnson, this is the time.
Sorry, Galvin's the chair of this.
Okay, Bill. This is the opportunity, I think we really have to take it and do something, because if we don't, I think it's gonna be some really hard times with the city, because there's so many people are close to retirement. And if we don't do something with this, and they're talking about the implementing other things of leave time and stuff, and if people aren't getting a wage and you're gonna have this other stuff, people could leave in mass numbers, and you're gonna have more problems. So, thank you.
All right.
Motion to close the floor? Oh, wait, we have another one there?
Nolan?
Eric Peters, 2980 Vince Lane, Green Bay. So as to Paul, the retention part, I'm kind of a prime example of that. I left a family business 20 years to come here. When I was hired, I did have a CDL. I came in as the number 15 truck driver for plowing snow out of 16. Had been here not quite 3 years, say 2 years, 8 months-ish. I'm already up to number 7. By the end of the year, I could possibly be number 5. Talking to people that have been here a lot longer than me, I know someone that's been here since 1989, and talking with him, he was telling me that years past, if you weren't here 20, 25 years, there's no way you were getting a truck driver position. And I mean, now we're hiring guys that had desk jobs with no CDLs, come in and learn the truck driver, will never sat in a truck in their life. So I mean that's a prime example right there of what we're going through. I understand that you guys have your process that has to be done, but I mean, as you can see, the amount of people that are here, it means something to us. So we're just trying to make it right. Thank you.
Sure. One more time?
So, what is like, you mentioned levies is one of the things that it's involved with helping with the wages for people working for the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any more kind of taxes besides that?
Not that really cover salaries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, everything else that would be grant funded or fee based are usually kind of specialty services.
okay.
Yeah.
So where do you like know where, like for example, these kinds of grants are coming from?
So there really aren't grants that would be available for the types of positions we're discussing right now. That's usually the city's, normal operating. I mean, that's.
No, I'm just asking, like, is it like from like a third party entity or
Like where the grants come from?
Yeah.
Yeah, it usually can be federal government, can be state government, can come from a lot of different sources.
Okay. Yeah, like one of the things that would probably one of the things that drives like today's age and economy and how capitalism works is not like the allocation of wealth too, but it's also the circulation of money that is going through the economy. So like the thing is like I notice that people are complaining how they need to have more money specifically allocated, but it's only coming from the levy. And I'm not saying to just tax people outright or just raise taxes on the land, but we have a lot of very austere areas allocated for mainly private businesses that have been here for sustained for decades, if not a century. So maybe the idea of trying to come up with these things is probably having like a certain percentage of the top businesses that are obviously doing well enough to circulate the money out of our local city slash state, like for example franchisees, which drives the money out of circulation for our local economy, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be more of a federal government decision.
Okay, yeah, I don't know the implications, this is why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
More specifically.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to kind of isolate out specific businesses or even specific
No,
industries.
I'm not saying specific businesses, which I kind of technically am, but like, the thing is, it's like, you're just literally trying to get, paying the people from the value of the land.
Mhm.
So it's like, and land is not a cheap thing to come by nowadays, so it's just, I'm just trying to like spitball here, just out loud, which,
Yeah, and I think at the local level, you find we have a lot of restrictions from the state and federal government in terms of what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
And property taxes is really like the only, that and fees are the only two ways that they allow us to generate revenue.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to just start having a slope fallacy slash bias, but it's just, it feels like you're just literally trying to take, like, you're just basically beating a dead horse at this point with, just specifically trying to take from taxes from the land and just trying to implicate that. If anything, probably just tax the wealthiest businesses that are locally around here, which that's something that I would like to see implemented just to see how it goes, but just only for like a temporary run, for like a small, short period.
Yeah, we just, unfortunately, we wouldn't have the ability to do that. We can only tax the value of the property, and that's literally where our jurisdiction ends.
Okay,
Yeah.
no.
No, but I appreciate the
No,
sentiment behind trying to come up with some solutions.
I'm just spitballing here, because
Yeah.
it just seems like everything's going into a circular argument with everyone in this meeting, so I don't, it's just an idea, I don't know too much about the current standings of how you allocate wages to people,
Mhm.
and try to keep that value for the wages and the land. So-
Yeah. Appreciate your interest, though, in asking the questions.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brendan Wolfel, E309 County Road in Luxembourg. This is more of, I guess, a proposal for the study. If you guys have looked at more of the private sector compared to just municipalities, around the surrounding area, even, municipalities that are comparable in size with Green Bay, Milwaukee, and that way. Us as a mechanic, I'm a mechanic at West Side Shop, but we're expected to do the work of the dealership. When something breaks down and now this equipment isn't getting any less sophisticated, newer it gets, it comes to us, now we're expected to diagnose and fix and repair it at the dealership level. Well, if you compare wages from the private sector to where we're at, that's not even close. So I guess it's more of a proposal maybe to look in that direction, and you can even go as far as, if you were to hire someone to plow the city, hiring that out or garbage, any of that, compared to what it's costing and, what we're getting paid to be that level, I guess is what I wanted to bring to the table, just, for you to look at, so. As far as setting up spreaders and looking at street sweepers and all this, there's dealerships, and now it's even getting hard for the dealership to come look at it, so it's really relying on us, to keep that running, so that's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close
Motion
the
to close the
floor.
floor?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Make a motion to refer this to staff and have them research, come back with information, and maybe suggest some alternative proposals, just per all of the things that we discussed tonight.
Second. Quick question. When you get that information, are you going to present it all here, or are you going to give it to the units here so that they can take a look at it prior to the meeting?
I think we'll try to meet with some of the representatives before.
Okay.
We'll try to do that, and then I think we'll try to have this in 2 weeks for personnel, to have a discussion there, so we don't have to have another one at the budget, save
Sure.
some time with that.
I appreciate it. You got a lot of work ahead of you then.
That's okay.
So,
I appreciate that you think this won't be talked about again.
Oh, I know it will. We might get, whittled down a little bit.
okay, good, because I'd like to have them as well informed as possible when we have that next meeting. So if they want to come and make more comments or suggestions, we can certainly get that aired. All right, thank you. All right, on to,
We got to vote yet.
oh, yeah, okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate your input. Thank you.
There's some work to do. That's why we did this.
What's that?
Keep it moving.
Yeah, I just kind of wait for the crowd to thin out.
It's all good.
All right, for consideration with possible action on health, dental, vision, life, and disability benefits starting January 1, 2024.
So what we have in the report or the packet is a recommendation for health insurance premiums to increase by 3%. And then I handed out this packet that I'll include for the common council. That goes through the fixed costs, and the projection that our broker is recommending for 6.12%, but we're asking for a 3%. Part of it is because we do believe that our reserve fund could cover the rest of it. We think it's in a good spot to do that, and I think every once in a while, it's okay to dip into that, and it's a little probably risky doing that, but as you can imagine, listening to a lot of people here concerned about the cost of living going up, trying to keep the health insurance premiums down as much as we can, we thought that was good to offset it. And then with the spousal surcharge, I think I might have put it a little bit inaccurately in here. So we have the family savings plan for employees where if you have a spouse, the spouse and your family is able to go on this plan where if you go to coverage or health insurance coverage, that's the providers that are in-network for network health and in-network for their own employer insurance, you can get up to 100% reimbursed for your medical expenses. Sometimes there's no money out of pocket, sometimes you have to actually get reimbursed. So since we implemented that plan, we would like to allow people who, prior to 2021, if you were not on the city health insurance plan, you were not eligible for that family savings plan option, we'd like to open it up to those employees. So that's one thing we like to do. But in doing that, if someone has a spouse and they're eligible for the family savings plan, but they turn it down and would like to go on the city health insurance plan, that's when we would like to include the $400 surcharge per month. Because we're offering this plan that's 100% reimbursable for your medical expenses, we think it's a really good option for them.
Sure.
So to come on our plan, we think you should be able to pay them for the risk that you'd be taking on. So if we didn't have the family savings plan, we wouldn't be recommending a surcharge. There's no way we do that without this option. So that's what is in here, and we're not, there's other employees in situations where this might have misread in the memo in the sense of some employees have the city health insurance and their spouse is on the family savings plan. In that situation, the employee isn't paying a surcharge because they have different health insurance option. It's only if your spouse comes on the city health insurance. I'm sure that was clear as mud.
It makes sense to me, but, question for you. They're recommending a 6% increase, you're saying 3%, what's the difference?
3%.
No, I mean, in actual.
And you're on the finance committee.
It's,
You rat.
I think it's, I could run some numbers real quick. I think it would. Oops.
Should be 300,000, I think.
Yeah, so I think it's a half of that, right? So it's about 150,000? No, you're right. Yep, 300,000. Yeah, so we're $600,000 short, and it's about $300,000. And what we have in here is, it may not be necessary based on our claims next year. Like if our claims continue to, go up, then it's gonna be higher than 300,000. If it's a better year, be less.
I guess I'm always worried about unfunded. And then how do you make it up the next year? Because, and I've done that a couple times, I've regretted it. One of my biggest regrets was taking that surplus tax money from the stadium and using it to offset the budget by $1 million one year, and then 800,000 from our savings account. And that's just, to me, that's not smart. Granted, this is not a huge amount of money, it's not like that, but, do you think budget-wise we can pick it up then the next year if need be?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why we're recommending it. And also at the fixed cost, I think we were conservative with some of our savings, especially from the family savings plan and
Okay.
from another program called Canada RX with, where you can get mail prescription from Canada. There's gonna be some savings with that. So I think we were conservative with our fixed costs and the savings. But I mean, it still is a little bit risky doing this, but I think it's a good option considering cost of living increases and trying to keep that premium down as low as we can.
Okay.
So, I seem to recall the last couple of budget seasons that we were saying that reserve was not where it needed to be. And so we were actually allocating more funding to go into that reserve. And what I'm hearing you say is that we have more than we need in that reserve, so which is it?
So I think about 4 or 5 years ago, and maybe Director Ellenbecker can help me, I think 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a tough spot with it. I think over the years, we've improved, and I think the family savings plan the past couple of years has helped us grow the reserve fund. And then we've had a tough year this year with our cost of claims. So we don't know maybe for sure where we're gonna end this year, but I do think that we're in a good spot, that we're above the internal policy of having 2 months of paid claims in our health reserve fund right now.
Yeah, and I think where I would feel a little bit more comfortable, to Alder Gavin's point, my fear is, right, you do this and then you create a structural deficit, so that next year you gotta make this up and whatever increase you have next year. And so, what's going through my mind, and I applaud, the intent behind it. I just wanna make sure that that's the best option, right? And just figuring out how we fund that. So when we go into budget season, do you, if we're gonna do that, do we still have to see a direct allocation into the reserve fund like we've done the last couple of years? Right, because I don't wanna leave that reserve fund in shaky position like it was 5 years ago, right? So I just wanna make sure that if we proceed with that the budget's accounting for that 3%. What kind of a dollar figure are we talking, do you know?
So I think you're talking about.
Was that the 300,000?
Yeah, 300,000 is what we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So.
What is the balance of the reserve fund right now? Because we've been putting, I'm trying to think, 50,000, 100,000 a year in there?
This is the health fund. So that one we don't actually budget for. You're not going to see that as a separate budget item.
Which fund have we been putting that money into?
Probably 702, which is your workers' comp, or 703, which is your general liability. In both cases, they were negative for different reasons. But yes, we had been adding additional dollars to them to get them to be positive.
Okay, so
And again,
yeah.
remember when they're positive, it also is, it's taking every claim that we know of and every claim that was incurred but not reported, and we book that up at the end of the year. And then we decide whether or not we're have enough funds to cover that or not. So in this case, the fund balance as of 12/31/2022, we're at about $2.8 million. Based on an average of 2 months claims, it was a little above $900,000 over the 2 month claim, 2 months on average. Part of it is because 2022 had a lower claims. You take 2 months of a lower number, you have a higher percentage of coverage. But so we take all claims plus what we know about and haven't paid, we add that up, and then we still have a fund balance of about $2.8 million at the end of 2022.
Yeah, I must be thinking of a different fund then. I'm confusing the two. I have to
Yeah,
look
this
back
one,
at
the
my
only one,
notes.
the way this is funded, I'm sorry, you know, again, the shortfall that we talked about, of course, 85% of it will be covered by the city, and then the employees will pick up the 15%. So if we were to increase it higher than 3%, the employees, of course, continue to pick up a 15% of that difference. So
Yeah.
we're over the 2% internal policy.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarity. So, do you need a motion tonight? Is that what you're looking for? Or is this
I mean, I think a
information?
motion, usually we take a motion prior to the budget, and that's kind of locked in for the budget.
Understood. Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. On item number 5, for consideration with possible action on the 2024 City of Green Bay and City of Green Bay Firefighters Local 141 International Association of Firefighters AFL-CIO 158 Labor Agreement.
I think we can go to closed session and just give you guys an update on where we're at.
Motion to close, motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Want to read the language?
The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, subsection 1, subsection E, Wisconsin statute for purposes of deliberating or negotiating public employee contracts for competitive or bargaining reasons. The committee may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to 19.85, subsection 2, Wisconsin statutes to report the results of the closed session and consider the balance of the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are in closed session.
Motion to return to regular business.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And do I have a?
Motion to
Motion.
direct staff to proceed as discussed in closed session.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously. Informational, we have a report of routine personal action items. Does anyone have any questions for staff?
Negative.
All right, and our next meeting is October 24th, 2023.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. All right, folks.
I didn't know if you were looking for an audible